but I focused on nonviolent crime. As an example, a woman who you know very well was in jail. She had 24 more years to serve. She served for 22 years. She had 20.
Alice Johnson.
Alice.
She was in the Super Bowl.
High quality, yeah. I said, how many years? And she was on a telephone call, and they were involved in selling marijuana, mostly marijuana. And she got like 50 years in jail.
But she'd be killed under your plan.
Huh?
As a drug dealer.
No, under under that?
Ooh, yeah.
Would depend on the severity. It would depend on the severity.
She's technically a former drug dealer. She had multi-million-dollar cocaine ring.
Any drug dealer, look.
So even Alice Johnson in that ad.
She can't do it, okay? By the way, if that was there, no, she wouldn't be killed. It would start as of now. So you wouldn't go to the past.
I know, but your policy.
No, starting now, yeah. But she wouldn't have done it.
Holy shit.
Now, today, if I did what I say that you have to do, and again, I'm not sure the country's ready for it. You know, China was hugely, 150 years ago, China was taken over by much lesser countries because they were all drugged out on the opium and all the problems.
It's a communist regime. They dropped the hammer.
They were all drugged out.
Wait, you mean like this?
Oh, you're... So
they were all drugged out.
Well, if there are any Trump fans out there hoping that Part 2 of the Bret Baier and Trump interview was going to go a lot better than Night 1, safe to say, you didn't get your wish. I didn't think he had it in him. I really didn't. I didn't think he had it in him to make himself look worse than he did the night before. But if Donald Trump is good for one thing, it's good for showing us how dumb a human can actually get when left to his own devices. And is given a few $100 million by his father. And is never held accountable for a single friggin' thing in his entire life. Either way, you have to admit, bragging about getting a drug dealer out of prison, only to have the interviewer then point out that your newest policy would then have that woman killed? Not a good look. And the fact-checking from Bret Baier only continued on Part 2 because here he is, fact-checking Donald Trump's tax cuts again.
Would your policies roughly be similar to your first term as far as taxes regulation?
Yeah, and I do even more taxes. Don't forget, we took in more money after I gave tax cuts than we did before I did them. People said, how did that happen? And you know, it's very interesting with Biden. They haven't been able to hurt the Trump tax cuts because the people won't stand for it. They won't stand for it. But those tax cuts gave us, I think, two things, the tax cuts and the regulation cuts. I actually think the regulation cuts were more important. You know, we have the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think the regulation cuts were actually more important than the tax cuts. But I did the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, bigger than the Reagan tax cuts, and the biggest regulation cuts in the history of our country.
You have concerns that costs something. The U.S. added $8 trillion to the national debt under your administration, about $3.5 trillion before COVID. Much of that time you had a Republican Congress. So if voters are concerned about the debt, why should they believe you'll address the debt in another term?
I love the question because we had to fix a country. When I took this country over, it was broken.
Bullshit.
And we created a machine, and the oil was starting.
Yep, the oil was just starting. The United States had no oil before Donald Trump came to power. Here's the sick bastard actually claiming that he has zero regrets on the way he handled COVID, you know, something that killed over 1 million Americans, and actually just delegates responsibility to all the governors.
Big part of that spending, COVID. Do you have regrets about how you handled that? Because some of your opponents are now running these loops of where you say you shut down the country.
We had to artificially close our country.
We did just the right thing. We closed it down. We understood the disease.
We closed the country down. We studied it. We learned about it. Some people wish we never closed it down. We did the right thing. Everything we did was right.
And Do you have regrets about doing that?
I gave the governors the options.
And here's Trump just flat out saying the reason he says DeSanctimonious is because DeSantis wasn't 100% loyal to Donald Trump, which, if you think about it, is ironic because you know that guy Mussolini and Hitler and Stalin and Mao and Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-il and Vladimir Putin, they're all pretty big on loyalty too. And then predictably pulls out the Ron came to me with tears in his eyes line. Actually, this time I think DeSantis was only weeping.
Because he has better PR than other governors, but other governors did a better job than Ron DeSanctimonious. So look.
Why do you use that name?
Because I got him elected, and I thought it was very disloyal when he said, yes, I'd run. I got him past 2 races. I got him past the primary because he was losing by 30 points or more.
So
he
it's
was
a loyalty question?
Yeah, it's a loyalty. I'm a big loyalist. You know, some people right here in this room have told me, sir, don't worry about loyalty. Loyalty doesn't mean anything in politics. I said, to me, it does. I got the guy elected. He came to see me, let's say weeping, because he was dead. He was getting out of the race. He was looking for jobs already, probably at law firms or wherever he's going to look.
Here's Bret Baier pointing out that in some way Donald Trump must be scared of Ron DeSantis because he's already spent more in Ron DeSantis attack ads than he spent in all of 2022 to support GOP candidates.
So
Well, when your PAC is running ads against him, and actually it adds up to more money than you spent supporting GOP candidates in 2022.
I supported a lot of
I
candidates.
know, but your tally so far on the PAC running ads against DeSantis is more than that support. So why do it? I mean, do you see him as the biggest threat?
Well, he's the number 2 right now, yeah. I mean, you know, at some place he could be replaced. The way he's going right now, he's dropping like a rock. He could be number 3, number 4, and you won't ever hear me talking about him again. I like fighting number 2. If you're in a golf match and you got one guy that's close and other guys that aren't so close, but he's not close.
Here's Trump with just a completely made-up story about how he has some Democrat friend that is hopefully going to vote for him. Obviously not the smartest Democrat if he does, and presses Donald Trump all the time on why he never talks about the 100 million plus people he saved with the vaccines.
So I have a Democrat friend who's very smart. Hopefully he votes for me, but he's very smart. He said, I don't understand one thing about you. I watch your rallies, they're incredible. You talk about beating ISIS, you talk about taxes, you talk about regulation, you talk about everything. But you never said that, I've never heard you talk about how the incredible job you did with the vaccines, because as you know, I got them done in 9 months, and it was supposed to take anywhere from 5 to 12 years. I broke their ass, okay? And you know who doesn't like me too much? The FDA, because they were very bureaucratic, and I got it done. And he said, you may have saved in the world, throughout the world, 100 million people, and you never talk about it.
And here's Trump trying to pretend like he's even dumber than he really is by pretending he doesn't know why it's a bad thing as a Republican to bring up the vaccine. I wonder why that would be. And you can tell Bret Baier's just not buying his bullshit with his snarky little "for some reason" comment.
Because as a Republican, it's not a great thing to talk about, because for some reason, it's just not.
For some reason?
Yeah, for some reason, because people love the vaccines and people hate the vaccines, but conservatives aren't. And I understand both sides of it, by the way. I understand both sides very well.
Sure you do. Well then, congratulations, because that officially makes you the only idiot in the planet that understands why your followers would rather suck down horse paste rather than get a life-saving vaccine from a deadly virus. And in one of the more disgusting responses from Donald Trump, here he is actually saying he'd be willing to pardon some of the January 6 rioters that were actually convicted of violent offenses against police officers. And as usual, R.I.P. Portland. One day that city's gonna have to rebuild.
You said that you would pardon, perhaps, the rioters.
Yeah,
Would you also pardon the people who were convicted of assaulting officers?
Well, you also have, we'd look at individual cases, but many of those people are very innocent people. They did nothing wrong. In Portland, where they killed people and they've destroyed a city, I mean, the place it's all boarded up.
And here's Trump looking like a further moron when Bret Baier asked him why the hell he calls Asa Hutchinson Ada Hutchinson, and Trump literally has no friggin' idea why he does it. He just makes something up on the spot. And obviously no Donald Trump presidential campaign would be complete without calling Chris Christie a slob.
Why would I let Ada Hutchinson, I call him Ada because, you know, his name's Asa, but I call him Ada for whatever reason.
Why is that? He needs...
I think he's weak.
Okay.
I think he's ineffective. But why would I let him... Chris Christie, who's got nothing going except I could be tougher than Trump. He's not tougher than anybody's slub. But why would I let these people take shots at me?
All this bluster from Donald Trump because he's just too worried about what the GOP primary debate would look like with all the ammunition he's now given all of his opponents, with all these legal troubles he's going through, with the Georgia case, Jack Smith's case, up in New York. He's all over the place. I think he's pretty much been in every courthouse in the country. And honestly, with things looking to get even worse for Donald Trump, I can't blame the guy. Either way, I don't think his campaign can survive a part 3 from this interview. But if for some reason that moron decides to sit down again with Bret Baier or anybody else for that reason, I'll be sure to bring it to you right here on the MeidasTouch Network. If you enjoy the content, like what you saw, like the message, feel free to click that like button, click the subscribe button. It's all free for you guys. Tell them Boston Brian sent you. Basically, all I want to do is get this message out. Let's show everybody what a sick, maniacal monster this guy really is and what an actual party with actual policies to help actual people really looks like. Unfortunately, it looks like it's up to the Democrats and the Democrats alone to hold the so-called party of law and order accountable. Ever since the GOP decided to follow their depraved leader into criminality, he has absolutely
Broke their ass.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.